I'm Dr. Shonali Chandra and I welcome you all to our YouTube channel Medicine Decoded. Now, in the last video, we had talked about the basic pathology of sickle cell disease, and in this video, we're going to take it one step forward, relying on our basics, which we did in the last video, to talk about sickle cell disease, particularly during pregnancy. Now, what are our concerns? Well, yes, as we saw in the last video, there can be a woman who's pregnant and with a lot of pre-existing medical comorbidities that we discussed in the last video can be seen with sickle cell disease. Now, it's obvious that women who are having the disease, who are homozygous, they will be having these pre-existent medical comorbidities. However, women who are heterozygous and are only sickle cell trait will not show such medical comorbidities. They will more likely be asymptomatic, but then they will have that increased propensity to sickling episodes under episodes of stress. So that can be there. Then there is concern regarding an affected offspring also. It's a heritable condition, inheritable hemoglobinopathy, and there can be a number of pregnancy complications, which can be a new set of complications which are occurring during the course of the 9 months and during the puerperal period. So we'll talk about them one by one. Let's talk about the risk of having an affected offspring. And let us first talk about this scenario here right in the center, where both the partners, the pregnant mother and the husband, both the partners are carrying the trait. Okay, now since it is an autosomal recessive disorder and we know how genetic works, that the offspring gets one gene or one allele from either of the parent, right? So look at this here, one normal gene, another normal gene, this one here, this is normal. Let's have a look at the next situation. Next combination can be a combination of this with this, that would be a trait. Let's have a look at the other combination of this with this, that would also be a trait. And then the other combination of this with this, right? And that would be the sickle cell disease. So 1 out of 4 offsprings will have risk of having the disease here in this situation. The risk is about 1 in 4, that is about 25% risk of having an affected fetus, right? When both partners are carrying the trait. Now, the other situation is that when one partner is carrying the trait and the other partner is having a disease. Okay, this could be the other way around also. Here it has been shown that the female has the disease. It could be the other way around also. Then 50% of the fetuses will be affected by the disease and the rest 50% will have the trait. Right? So the problem is when there is an affected allele in both the partners. Both could be trait, all right? One could be diseased and the other could be carrying the trait, but there should be a defective gene in both the partners. Right? And if both the husband and the wife are carrying the disease, then obviously all the offsprings will have the disease. Now look at the third situation. When one parent has the trait, and that could be also either parent, maybe the female, maybe the male. Because I'm talking about pregnancy, that's why I have included here that the pregnant woman is carrying the trait. So you see here, when we identify a pregnant woman who is carrying the trait and her husband is not carrying the trait, husband is normal, then all the offsprings will, see, look at this, half of them will not be normal and the other half will be having the trait. There will be no risk of having a sickle cell disease affected, a homozygous sickle cell disease affected offspring. So this is like safe. This is like a safe situation. That's why in gynae practice and in obstetric practice, it is very important to see that if you have either of the partner, and since we are obstetricians, will encounter pregnant women first. If we see a pregnant woman with sickle cell trait, we should definitely check the partner. Okay, because the problem will be when both will have the trait, or if we have a patient who's having sickle cell disease and she is pregnant, then also we need to check the husband also, because we need to determine what are the chances that they will have an affected offspring or they have an affected fetus, right? So in the situation where you have the partner also carrying the trait or partner also carrying the disease, and there is a risk of possibility of affected fetus, then prenatal genetic diagnosis is an option for these couples to check for the fetus, to check for the affected fetus. Prenatal genetic diagnosis can be offered to them. So that is the clinical relevance, right? And you need to keep in mind that the mode of inheritance is autosomal recessive, to understand this very basic concept. So I hope you remember this diagram from the previous video where we had discussed the various medical comorbidities that can be there in a woman or can be there in a patient with sickle cell disease. Now we're talking about a pregnant woman, and you'll realize that pregnancy with sickle cell disease is a high risk pregnancy, mainly because of these comorbidities, and also because pregnancy related the metabolic changes or physiological changes that happen could worsen some of these comorbidities. Like for example, in pregnancy, the cardiac output increases, particularly more so at labor and in the immediate postpartum period. And these women are already having an underlying cardiac dysfunction. They're already having pulmonary hypertension. So they are at more risk for heart failure during pregnancy. They could have a pre-existent retinopathy. They could have a pre-existent retinopathy, and if it's of the proliferative type of retinopathy, which is untreated, and she's entered into pregnancy, then during the course of, especially during the course of labor, there could be retinal hemorrhage. Right? She could be having a pre-existent history of stroke. For that, she could be already on blood thinners, and then that needs to be taken into consideration. What blood thinners is she taking during pregnancy? What blood thinners can you give, can you not give? So yes, because of these medical comorbidities, a lot of questions are raised during their pregnancy, right? Or let's say, for example, yes, pregnancy is a state of, hypercoagulability by itself, right? And therefore, yes, the risk of thrombotic strokes could also increase in pregnant women with sickle cell disease. Pregnancy is an immunomodulated condition. Pregnancy is a situation where there can be, flaring up of infections which are already there. Right? So any flaring up of pre-existent infection or a newly acquired infection during pregnancy would be particularly problematic for a woman with sickle cell disease, because yes, lung infarcts and lung infections can predispose to acute chest syndromes. Right? And more so, yes, think about it, that there is underlying hemolysis that happens. Whenever there is hemolysis, you see, whenever there is hemolysis, there is another very, very important point to note here, that, when the red cells are being destroyed, right, and new red cells are being formed to replace them very rapidly. Okay, so there is rapid hemolysis and there is rapid erythropoiesis to take over the destroyed RBCs. So yes, the turnover, that is what we call as the turnover of RBCs. There's a rapid turnover of RBCs. For that, folic acid is required, right? For that, folic acid is required. So if a woman is having, pre-existent folate deficiency, then yes, her anemia worsens with episodes of recurrent episodes of hemolysis. If they continue happening throughout pregnancy, her anemia worsens. So anemia worsens. Right? So that is another concern. That is why pregnancy with sickle cell disease is a high-risk pregnancy. Moreover, look at this. By the time she has reached the pregnant state and she's a woman with sickle cell disease, she's already undergone autosplenectomy. Spleen is our defense against these capsulated bacteria. And then there is an increased risk of infections with capsulated organisms during pregnancy as well, and those infections by themselves could cause acute chest syndrome. In pregnancy, there are certain renal changes that take place. Remember, in pregnancy, there is this propensity for the ureter to dilate. There is this propensity for hydroureteronephrosis and stasis of urine, right? And pregnancy itself predisposes to increased risk of symptomatic urinary tract infection, which can ascend upward and cause pyelonephritis, right? And asymptomatic bacteriuria in pregnancy is particularly problematic because it can ascend upwards and can cause pyelonephritis. Now we have two factors which are increasing the risk of pyelonephritis: pregnancy per se, and then coexistent renal dysfunction and a propensity for cystitis. So there is an increased risk of UTI and pyelonephritis. And this pyelonephritis is not a simple infection, it is a systemic infection. It can progress to sepsis. It can lead to release of bacterial endotoxins, and the sickle cells, they are particularly more prone to endotoxin related damage, further worsening the hemolysis and putting the woman in a crisis like mode. We'll call it sickling crisis. So yes, one thing can lead to the another thing, right? And then she can be bothered by bone pains during her pregnancy, right? Bone pains during her pregnancy, and she could come with leg ulcers during her pregnancy. So all of these comorbidities could be there. The fact that she could have pigment gallstones, and these pigment gallstones may become symptomatic during pregnancy particularly, and they can lead to liver dysfunction during pregnancy. Now that can also happen. That's a possibility. So yes, pregnancy with sickle cell disease is a high-risk pregnancy. These medical comorbidities should be kept in mind. So the best situation would be that pre-pregnancy management is possible. That is the best situation, that you have a woman with sickle cell disease who is trying to get pregnant, and there is a woman maybe with sickle cell trait who's trying to get pregnant. So pre-pregnancy management needs to be kept in mind. She should be in the optimal health to get pregnant, isn't it? So what is the pre-pregnancy management going to include? It is going to include check the immunization status of the woman. Has she received her adequate immunizations? Is she vaccinated against Hep B? I mean, obviously infections against which immunization is possible: Hep B, HIV, and you should check for the routine influenza vaccinations, Haemophilus influenzae vaccinations, right? Is she vaccinated against those encapsulated organisms and bacteria? Right, pneumococcal and Hep B vaccination, particularly a baseline cardiac function assessment to determine whether it is good for her, whether it is safe for her to even bear the pregnancy. That would be known by having a baseline assessment of cardiac function by doing an echocardiography, and then a baseline retinal screening, a baseline, complete blood count, liver function test, and the renal function test would be required. And yes, partner screening for sickle cell, because that will have implications for having an affected offspring. And if the partner is also having a trait, then yes, invasive fetal testing and prenatal genetic diagnosis can be offered. And if if there is an affected offspring, they can have a option, they can be offered, or they could request for therapeutic termination. So that is also an option available for them. Now, there are certain other pregnancy complications which can also happen during the course of the pregnancy, and that have to do with sickling in the placental bed. Sickling in the placental bed. So you see, you have the placenta here. This is the decidual plate and the spiral arterioles. They are perforating the decidual plate and they are supplying the intervillous spaces. Right? Now, what can happen? There can be sickling in this placental bed from the sickle cells which are reaching into the placental circulation from the maternal side, and then they can trigger a set of events. Right? What is the fun trigger event that you will see? Again, the spiral arterioles will maybe be blocked by the sickle cells. Right? There will be placental infarcts. Right? There will be placental infarcts. And it will depend upon how much of this placental bed is getting infarcted, right? So yes, eventually it will trigger what we call as uteroplacental insufficiency. Yes, right? So if you have the maternal blood perfusing the intervillous spaces through these spiral arterioles, and the spiral arterioles are narrowed, they are having the placental bed has been infarcted in certain regions. So obviously we will like to call it as uteroplacental insufficiency. You see, less of maternal perfusion reaching the placenta and less of oxygen, less of nutrients available for the baby. And if the degree of this placental infarction is too much, then it can also trigger separation of placenta. If the same thing happened early on in pregnancy, it can trigger the separation of the early forming placenta or separation of the chorionic villi, and then can trigger abortions. So what are the pregnancy complications? The pregnancy complications are risk of miscarriage, risk of IUGR, risk of preeclampsia, preterm, premature placental separation, placental abruption, fetal distress in labor because of this uteroplacental insufficiency, increased risk of UTI and pyelonephritis, and increased risk of venous thrombosis. Yes, pregnancy itself is a hypercoagulable state. Pregnancy, if complicated with other factors which leads to risk of venous thrombosis like preeclampsia, like hemoconcentration, if there is dehydration, if there is immobility, and there can be all other risk factors for venous thrombosis also. These are particularly more risk of venous thrombosis. Right? Now, also please remember that not all women with sickle cell trait will have these complications. Women with sickle cell trait who are usually asymptomatic, or they may have mild anemia, they usually do well during pregnancy. Women with sickle cell trait and pregnancy will not have such adverse pregnancy outcomes, will not have such medical comorbidities. At the most, they will have increased risk of UTI and pyelonephritis. This has been documented. But rest of the complications, they don't happen. They have a good course during their pregnancy. So women with sickle cell trait, they are fine to get pregnant. They can, and they can even continue their pregnancy with close observation. It's fine. Okay. So how do you manage the pregnancy with sickle cell disease? How do you do that? Or how do you manage pregnancy with sickle cell trait also? The same principles will apply, and the same principles that apply outside of pregnancy will also apply here. Like we discussed in the last video, keep the patient warm, keep the woman warm, advise her to not do activities which lower her body temperature down, not to expose herself to cold environment. So keep warm, maintain good hydration. Folic acid supplementation needs to increase. 4 milligram per day recommended. It is given to take care of the rapid red cell turnover, which creates an increased requirement for folic acid in the body. And then yes, penicillin prophylaxis is mandatory to take care of infection from the encapsulated organisms. Regular follow-up with regular investigations is recommended, like repeated hemoglobin, hematocrit, platelet count, serum bills to check for hemolysis, LDH, a peripheral smear can be also done, and the liver enzymes. So baseline investigations and then regular investigations, preferably every fortnightly, I mean every 2 weeks. Earlier, if the woman's reports are worsening, then you can do it even more frequently. But yes, some sort of regular workup needs to be done, a regular urine routine, and at the same time, when you're doing regular investigation and asking the woman to come for every visit every 2 weeks, and you're seeing her regularly, a regular BP check is very, very important, right? Regular routine to check for urine protein, to check for hematuria in the urine, right? That is important, because these would be your signals that maybe there is some renal dysfunction happening. So urine routine and microscopy to also check for asymptomatic bacteriuria, because asymptomatic bacteriuria is anyways treated in pregnancy and should never be ignored, definitely in case of sickle cell disease or sickle cell trait. So you will treat that asymptomatic bacteriuria also. And yes, regular fetal scans for fetal growth, and they can begin depending upon whether the clinical examination is adequate or not. And yes, but anyways, some sort of fetal monitoring should definitely begin from 32 weeks onwards, and it should be supplemented with fetal growth scans if required. At least one growth scan should definitely be done at 32 weeks. So during pregnancy, this is how you are going to follow up the patient. Prophylactic blood transfusion. Yes, now whether prophylactic blood transfusion is required or not is slightly controversial. It is often used to treat severe anemia, So yes, there are different guidelines for this, but yes, if the hematocrit is less than 25% and if the hemoglobin S concentration or fraction is more than 60%, then many prefer a prophylactic blood transfusion during pregnancy, right? Now these thresholds may vary from guideline to guideline, but generally, yes, remember that, even with different cutoffs, the logic being that if she's going towards severe anemia or the HbS fraction is significantly high, particularly more than 60%, many recommend prophylactic blood transfusions. Blood transfusions, repeated blood transfusions, they come with their own set of complications. So you will have to weigh the requirement of transfusion with the dangers of transfusion and the dangers of particularly of repeated blood transfusions. That needs to be kept in mind. Now moving on, special points about labor and delivery. Now the same thing is going to be followed, right? The patient is going to be made comfortable during labor. She needs to be kept warm and well hydrated, right? And she needs to have an adequate amount of pain relief, right? So obviously she's having labor pains, and pain itself is a stress trigger. Pain causes tachycardia. So basically, if you look at it, the management in labor and delivery is in line of how we manage women with heart disease in pregnancy. You see, because what is the main concern? The main concern is some underlying cardiac dysfunction or some underlying pulmonary hypertension, which is placing the woman's, heart at risk, right? Which is placing the woman at risk of heart failure. So she needs to be kept in a propped up position with an oxygen cylinder or an oxygen source nearby. So if she is getting hypoxic, you see, she can be be immediately put on the oxygen mask. So yes, proper monitoring during labor is also very essential. I mean, you can't have this, ideally should deliver in tertiary care centers with the adequate support staff, with multidisciplinary care, so that a physician or a hematologist could come and see the patient also at the same time whenever it is required. So we need to keep these points in mind. You see that she should not be hypoxic during labor, so there should be a monitoring of the pulse rate, of the blood pressure, and also of oxygen saturation. So ideally should be attached to the monitor which is available, or if that is not there, at least a pulse oximeter should definitely be there, right? So monitoring is also very, very important, right? So it will be a high risk labor situation, and they will be managed like women with heart disease are monitored during labor. And keep check for the oxygen saturation, the respiratory rate, the blood pressure, the pulse rate, right? All that needs to be taken into account as well. Now moving on, yes, if we talk about the pain relief, you should be giving good pain relief. So this epidural analgesia, conduction analgesia, they can be used, and they should be used whenever available. Now keep the blood arranged. You see, women, because of the pregnancy related complications, she could have an abruption, she could have preeclampsia, she's already anemic going into labor, she could need blood any point in time, she could go into PPH, she will not be able to tolerate a little amount of blood loss because she's already anemic. She may be hemoconcentrated, she may have preeclampsia, she may have some complication leading to antepartum hemorrhage. So you need to be thoughtful, and you need to keep in mind that blood needs to be kept arranged. So you need to send samples from the very beginning for blood grouping and cross matching, and you should have a baseline investigations as mentioned in the previous slide available with you. And there is as such no contraindication to vaginal delivery. All right, as such there is no contraindication to vaginal delivery, and cesarean section is reserved for obstetric indications only. Right, now moving on, what about the need for postpartum prophylaxis? They will often need after delivery some form of postpartum prophylaxis. I've done an entire video on thromboprophylaxis. So yes, sickle cell disease is a medical comorbidity which adds to the risk of thrombosis and should be considered when taking the decisions on thromboprophylaxis. Now moving on, the pregnant woman could have an acute complication like sickling crisis. For most women during pregnancy, this happens mainly in the last part of pregnancy, that is the third trimester, more common. It can happen anytime, mostly happens in the third trimester, also can happen in the postpartum period, in the puerperal period also. So this sickling crisis is going to present in various forms. There can be, a sudden worsening of anemia. Right, there could be this acute chest syndrome with the hallmark of pleural infection, pleuritic chest pain, tachypnea, breathlessness. She could have an underlying infection, which is the trigger event for the sickling crisis. Because of that sudden anemia or sudden sickling crisis, she could have sudden hypotension as well. So there can be various manifestations for this sickling crisis. And how do you manage? She could come with, let's say for example, a lot of pain, bone pains, that could be her main complaint. So yes, there could be abdominal pain, which could be confused with certain other clinical conditions, but definitely you need to keep this in mind that she could be having a sickling crisis. So a preliminary management, of course you'll take help from the physician or the hematologist, but also what is the immediate requirement here? Whenever a woman comes with a sickling crisis in pregnancy, she needs to be admitted straight away. She needs to be kept well oxygenated and warm, oxygen by nasal cannula, IV hydration. She needs to maintain her hydration. Thromboprophylaxis should definitely be considered. If she's having pain, then you need to give her analgesia. Opioid analgesias are fine in such a situation. And then we have the use of antibiotics. Antibiotics will be used if there is an underlying infection which is the source of this sickling crisis. This underlying infection could be a pneumonia. This underlying infection could be a pyelonephritis. It could be a cystitis. It could be any infection, right? So antibiotics will be used if there is infection. So without going into too much medical details about the types of sickling crisis or what exactly is going to be the lung management or heart management, I'm not touching upon that. But what I want to tell you is, as far as obstetrics is concerned or pregnant woman care is concerned, that when a woman comes with a sickling crisis, you should be able to at least identify the importance of immediate recognition and admission. So you need to keep in mind that women with sickle cell disease when pregnant can present with sickling crisis that can have the variety of manifestations which we've discussed in this video also and in the previous video as well.